Hi everyone, here is a tutorial on how to evaluate a source. It is very, very important that you always evaluate your sources, especially the ones you find online, because as you may know, there is a lot of excellent information online. There's also a lot of not so excellent information online. Evaluating your source is the point where you take a couple minutes of your time to check the source out and investigate it a little bit just to make sure that it's reliable, and it doesn't have to take long. So here's how you do it. I'm going to share my screen and we will walk through how to evaluate a source. So the first screen that I'm on here is the How to Evaluate a Source page on the library website. All of this information can be found there as well. And it gives you some information on how and why to evaluate. And then here it has the graphic organizer. It says click here to download the Evaluate a Source graphic organizer. I recommend that you do so, especially if you're not too comfortable evaluating your sources yet. As you get better at it, you will eventually not need the graphic organizer anymore. You'll eventually just it will just become sort of a habit. But in the meantime, feel free to use the graphic organizer. So I opened it here, so I'll show you how to fill it out and give you examples of how that works in a couple minutes here. So this is what the graphic organizer will look like. So I'm back on the web page here, and you can see when you scroll down that there's this large infographic here. It's called the FACT method, and this is just a guide to help give you some ideas of how to evaluate a source. It is not like something you should follow, like it's a set of rules. It's just like a guide, a set of examples and suggestions. So I'm going to use this to kind of help guide me through here. So you can see that the first step it says is the F for fact finders. Check a fact finder is the first step on this. This is what you would use if you were doing like current event research and there were current event articles that were making these claims and you weren't sure if they were true or not because the information is so new that you're not sure yet. That is when you want to check with a fact finder. So if you were doing current events research and you have an article that says something like it's dated yesterday and it says like it makes a claim like Pennsylvania schools are all shut down for the rest of the year, you would, before you believe that, you would want to go ahead and just check with a fact finder to make sure that it was accurate, because sometimes fake information gets spread around online. So that's what the F is here, check for a fact finder. You would just type the claim into Google with the word fact check. And so you would basically just type the claim, Pennsylvania schools closed for rest of year, and then you would type in the word fact check, and you're going to see if any reliable articles or fact checkers have sort of debunked or confirmed this. So the first one is from is an April Fool's thing, so I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to scroll down. This is from AP News, which is the Associated Press, which is a very reliable source, and it is confirming that schools were ordered to remain closed. I can see that NBC Philadelphia has also confirmed the same thing, and as have a couple, and it has a couple of other sources. So that's how you can check fact finders to kind of make sure that your information is legit if you're doing sort of current events research. If you're doing like historical research or topic research that's not really current event based, you probably skip this part because you're not really going to need to check a fact finder unless the information that's being claimed is very, very new. So the next step on this is the research the authority, the A section, and that's really the main section I'm going to focus on here today. Researching the authority only has to take a minute, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. It doesn't take long, but it is the #1 best thing you can do to make sure that when you evaluate a source, you make sure it's reliable. That's to check the authority. And what I mean by that is that you are simply going to look up the publisher, the author, or the website, and you're going to try to get a sense for whether this is a reliable provider of information or not. And so you can do that really simply, actually, by just running the name of the publisher, the author, or the website through Google, through Media Bias Fact Check, or through Wikipedia. And any of those 3 places, you'll be able to sort of scan and skim to get a sense for, does this author have a good reputation? Do they have any known biases I need to know? Is there any red flags I need to be aware of? So that's basically what you're doing when you're evaluating a source. So that was a broad overview. Oh, I forgot the C, sorry. C for corroborate. That just means that you should always be able to find the same information across multiple sources. So reliable information will be corroborated and confirmed by other reliable sources. So you always want to just check your sources to see if this claim is being kind of corroborated by multiple sources. So if there's just one guy on the internet that's saying Pennsylvania schools are closed and no one else is saying that as well, and no reliable sources are confirming that, then you might not want to take that information to be reliable just yet. So those are sort of the three main ways that you evaluate your information. I'm going to go into more depth in the second part of the video now about the A part, the researching the authority, to show you actually how to do it. But if you already know how to do it, you could stop watching the video at this point. But here we go. How do you actually evaluate the authority? So I'm going to go to my Noodle tools and I'm going to open up one of my sources to use as an example. So I'm going to open up my source here. And once this opens, I will show you how to evaluate this source. So here it comes. It is opening now. So when this source is open, here it is, finally. I'm going to minimize the screen and I'm going to open up that graphic organizer from the beginning that I told you about. This is the evaluating a source graphic organizer. So it basically just guides you through some information you would want to obtain before you write your evaluation. So again, you don't always have to fill out every single box. You don't have to answer every question. This isn't like a graded test. It's just a guide to give you kind of a starting point. So let me show you how I would evaluate this source with the graphic organizer. Okay, the first question it asks is, did you find this source in a database or the free web? Well, this one is in SIRS Issues Researcher, which is a database. So I'm going to type database. And then it says, what is the name of the database? Well, that's usually in the top left-hand corner of the screen. And there it says SIRS Issues Researcher. Okay. And then it asks for the type of the source. And the type of the source is really easy to find when it's on a database. You're going to scroll down, and where it says in gray under the title, it says the word magazines. So I'm just going to type in magazines. It asks for the name of the source. What is the name of the magazine that this source was originally published in? So that's right next to the word magazines. You'll see first it has the name of the author, and then right next to that it has the name of the source, name of the magazine. And so I'm just going to copy that and paste it over here. Okay. Next it says, what reputation or biases does this source have? And so if you are familiar with the source, PETA, People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, you can just type out what you already know about it. And if you don't know anything about it, then you can check Wikipedia or Media Bias Fact Check. Now, I am familiar with PETA, but I'm going to pretend I'm not to help you see how you can evaluate a source pretty quickly. So let's say that you have a source here that you've never heard of. You don't know if they have a good reputation or not. Really simple, super simple way to find out is to open up a tab in Google and to just type the name of the source and then type the word Media Bias Fact Check or the word Wikipedia. You can use either of these sources. They're both really helpful. I prefer Media Bias Fact Check, so I'm going to click on that. And then the first result here is Media Bias Fact Check, which is a website, and it's their page on PETA, which is my source. So I'm going to click on that and see what they have to say about my source. This is called reading laterally. Reading laterally means that you go and check out a source, a different source, to find out information about your source. My source is PETA, People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. I am now going to read laterally to learn about PETA. I'm going to go to this other website called Media Bias Fact Check. Wikipedia also works for this. And so scrolling down, you can see that the first thing that Media Bias Fact Check has about PETA is that they have a conspiracy level rating of mild, and they have a pseudoscience level rating of strong. So those two things are not really great indicators at the moment. So I'm going to type that into my box here. So I'm going to type that Media Bias Fact Check rates PETA as having mild conspiracy levels and strong pseudoscience levels. And we'll pretend that I spelled pseudoscience correctly there. And we'll pretend that I did it again. And we'll pretend that I did it again. There we go. Is that not how you spell pseudoscience? Nope. 4 tries and I didn't spell it correctly. Okay, moving on. The next thing that it says here is that sources in the conspiracy pseudoscience category may publish unverifiable information that is not always supported by evidence. These sources may be untrustworthy for credible, verifiable information. Therefore, fact-checking and further information is recommended. So I'm actually going to copy that and paste it right over here because that's really helpful to me. So media bias fact check says, okay, oh, I don't want the whole thing, goodness, just this sentence here. Okay, so that's helpful information to me, and I'll see. It also says that they have a factual reporting reputation that is mixed. So PETA is an American animal rights organization based in Norfolk, Virginia, and led by Ingrid Norwerk. While it does publish some factual, credible information, it also relies on pseudoscience. So I'm going to copy that sentence here and put that in here too, because now within this box here, I have quite a lot of information about the biases and the reputation of PETA that I otherwise would not have known about. Okay, and if you scroll down, there's usually more information as well about the source. This one doesn't have more information, but usually the sources have like paragraphs more information you can use if you need to. Okay, so now I'm back on my graphic organizer, and the next box is saying what is the name of the author. So I'm going to go back to my source and see if I can find the name of the author. And here it is, Guillermo, Kathy Guillermo. That's the name of the author. Okay, I'm going to just type that in there. And then it says, what qualifications does this author have in this topic or this field? And if I didn't know that information, I could Google it or Wikipedia it. But also databases often will tell you. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the database. And there's actually a paragraph here that says about the writer. And it gives me information about the author, Kathy Guillermo. And it says that she's the VP of Lab Investigations at PETA. So I'm going to copy that so that we know who she is. Okay, and I'm going to paste that. Okay, now I'm pretty much done with my source at the moment, so I'm going to expand the screen here. And I now have all of this information filled into my graphic organizer. I now need to take that information, read it, synthesize it, and determine what my opinion is on this source. If after reading all of this information, do I believe this source is reliable or not, and why? And that's what you write in the evaluation. So I'm going to scroll down here and it says in red, write your evaluation on this source. And then since, at first, the first couple of times you might not really know how to start, I put some bullet points that give you some suggestions of questions to ask yourself. So the first question is, was your source found on a library database? Sources found on databases tend to be more reliable. That doesn't mean they always are, but they tend to be. So this source was found a library database, which can usually mean it is reliable. And then it says who wrote or published the information. And I have information about the author here and also about the source. So those are the 2 pieces I want to put here. So I'm going to put here information was written by Kathy Guillermo, who works for PETA. And PETA, if you don't know what PETA is, you might want to define that. I think most people know what PETA is, so I'm going to leave that sentence out here. Kathy Guillermo, who works for PETA. And then it says, what qualifications or reputation do they have? And should we consider the information reliable? Are there any potential issues or biases to mention? And for me, there are, because remember up in here, I found out a lot of important information about PETA from Media Bias Fact Check. They said that PETA can sometimes veer into the conspiracy theory area, and they also tend to publish sometimes pseudoscience. And it told me that sources that do that, they are not necessarily unreliable all the time, but that they sometimes are. So that information is important in my evaluation. So I'm going to put, according to Media Bias Fact Check, PETA can sometimes use conspiracy and pseudoscience in their articles. Because of this, they cannot always be assumed to be reliable. So what will I do about that? I will make sure to corroborate the information with a different before using it. So that's how that could be an evaluation. That's just one example. Evaluations can all look different, but basically what you're wanting to say is sort of, what did you learn about the source and the author? Did anything you learn about them encourage you to find them to be reliable, completely unreliable, or somewhat in the middle, which means you now need to go make sure you corroborate across another source. And for me, for PETA, that's what happened. The information I found out about PETA said that sometimes they're reliable, but sometimes they're not. They've been known to push conspiracy theories and pseudoscience in addition to factual information. So because they tend to be more 50-50, I don't want to just go ahead and trust that this article is reliable because the source is not always reliable. So I'm going to go make sure to try to find another source that is talking about the same information as this source so that I can confirm that it's accurate before I use it. So I hope that helps, and I hope that makes sense. And if you have any trouble evaluating your sources, of course, let me know. It's not really like a super straightforward process. It's every time you evaluate a source, every source is different. Your sentences are always going to look a little different. But that is one example of how to evaluate a source, and I'm more than happy to help you with more of that as you need it. So let me know. So happy researching, everyone, and enjoy the research process. Bye.